Hi there, Jeremy O'Carroll, Director of the Fitzroy Learning Centres here. Since you're watching this video, I suspect that you already have some idea of just how successful the Fitzroy Method's been. In fact, students at Fitzroy Community School, the school in which this whole method was developed, have consistently ranked up the top in the NAPLAN literacy tests, not just in Victoria, but also in Australia. The question, however, is whether you can in some way get similar results with your students, be they students in a classroom, your children, or else just people you tutor. And that really is what this program is about. What I'm attempting to do is help you model everything we do at Fitzroy Community School so that you can get similar results. You see, the Fitzroy method is not as simple as some people would think. Sure, if you use the program just by picking up a book randomly and working with it, you'll still get good results. But if you want to get the really excellent results, then there's a certain approach you'll need to take, a certain system, a certain methodology. And if you can learn that, then your results are going to skyrocket. And so that really is what this course is about. I'm going to show you just what you need to do and when to get those outstanding results. You see, it's not just a question of picking up, say, the first reader, a fat cat, and blazing away. To get the best results, what you'll need to do is do a whole series of things before you even read the reader. And then as you read the reader, you'll be doing that in a certain way. And post-reader, there'll also be a sequence of things that you need to cover to ensure that your students are ready to go on to the next level. And so it's those things that we'll be looking at in this program, which will be covering 7 key areas. Now, the first area we're going to be looking at is phonics. The Fitzroy Method is a phonics program, so to use it effectively, then you obviously have to understand phonics well, and in particular, you need to be aware of certain phonics pitfalls, certain tricks and traps, in a sense, that can confuse even experienced teachers. So in that first section, I'm not so much going to be teaching you phonics because chances are high you're already quite familiar with phonics, but what I'll be doing is showing you areas which, as I say, even experienced teachers can sometimes run into trouble. In the second section, I'll be looking at the way the phonics program is put together, so the system and structure of the Fitzroy Method. You see, the main thing that differentiates the Fitzroy Method from other programs is just how systematic it is. Every part in the Fitzroy program builds on the one before it, which builds on the one before it, which builds on the one before it. And so what that means is if you're a student, you're only ever learning in tiny little increments. That means that you're never being inundated with too much information, so everything's always readily understandable. And so as a result, your confidence always remains very high because everything's so doable. And so that's really the beauty of our program, and I haven't seen another program which is as structured or systematic as ours is. And so I'll show you just how we put it together and why. And the advantage of that is you'll then be able to look at any reading program around, be it ours, be it another, and you'll see very quickly, in fact, at almost just a glance, how effective it will be, because there are certain key fundamentals that all reading systems, or good ones, need to follow in a sense, and if you don't do that, then the reading system will struggle. So it's going to really help your understanding of what makes a good reading system work, and as a result, you're then going to be able to run your classrooms in accordance with that. And that's another thing about this program. I'm not just teaching you what you need to do and when. I'm also teaching you the principles behind why we do certain things. And that's important because each classroom environment is different. And so you can't just 100% copy everything we do at Fitzroy Community School, because your classroom will have slightly different challenges. It will have a different set of students, a different learning environment. And so what you really need to do above everything else is understand why we do certain things. Understand those principles, because if you do, then you're going to be able to tinker slightly with the way our approach, but get even better results in your classroom because you know just what changes need to be made to suit your particular students. After looking at the system and structure, what we'll then go on to look at is the first letters and the first words. And you know, you've got so many different theories about this. You know, what letter, for instance, should you teach students first? You know, how do you go about teaching children to piece together the letter sounds to form words? Because that can be a problem too. You might have children who can sound out k, at, t, but guess what? They never hear the word cat from the sounds. So how do we go about doing that? And I'll be showing you different games we play in class and different just techniques to help children remember the best way to write the letters and to learn them and remember the sounds more quickly. After teaching you those things, we then go on to the next part, which is looking at how do you teach phonics in a classroom, because depending on the method you're teaching, be it phonics, be it whole language or some other method, you actually vary your approach a little bit. And teaching phonics has certain areas or issues that can arise. For instance, sometimes students will be reading a phonics book, for instance, our first one, A Fat Cat, and maybe they're looking at the picture and they see that, well, it's a fat cat. And so as a result, they can say, even with their eyes shut, fat cat. And so on one level, you might think, wow, they're reading it, but actually they're not even reading the text, they're just remembering the text. So there are several things that can go wrong in a phonics classroom, several things you'll want to actually focus on when you're teaching with the phonics method. And so in that section, that's what we'll be doing. Now, the thing to remember about this entire program is that everything's based on 30 plus years of classroom exposure. So these are not some new theory we've come up with. This is theories which have been put in the classroom, tried and tested. And you know, we've constantly needed to revise our program over the years. You can't get things right straight away. In some ways, you can never perfect anything. It's a constant kind of process of gradual improvement. But what we can say is that everything you'll learn in this program comes from years and years and years of classroom experience. And as a result, you know it works. It might not be the most perfect system imaginable, but if you follow it, you will get excellent results. Okay, after looking at the teaching of phonics, then what I'm going to do is zero in on the first 40 readers. So this introductory program is looking at the early readers. So this is reader 1 through to reader 20X. So remember, we've got 1 to 10, then you've got an extension series, 1X to 10X, then you've got the 11 to 20s and a new extension series, 11X to 20X. So we're looking at the first 40 readers. I'll really be zeroing in on certain specifics in those readers and showing you just how we teach them, some of the issues that might arise, how they're put together. And so that will mean that when you teach these early readers, you'll be very familiar with, in a sense, the best practices for teaching them. Then I'll be looking at the psychology of teaching. We all know that teaching is about a lot more than just the program, because you can have some program that's been inspired directly from God. But if you don't create a good rapport with your students, if they're kind of climbing under the tables, etc., while you're trying to teach them, then they'll still not be learning. So in fact, the over 35 years of classroom exposure of this method, we've learnt a number of things, and in particular we've looked at how do you really get the most out of your students, how do you interact with them in the most positive manner. And so I'll be sharing with you some of the things that we've learnt over those decades. Now finally, what I'll be doing in the program is I'll be looking at how you can evaluate students. And this is important for a number of reasons. One, you need to know when students are ready to move on to the next level. And two, you want to have an idea of how well they're tracking. And three, sometimes you get students who come from other places and, you know, some other schools, some other learning environment, maybe one where they've never even studied phonics or certainly not studied phonics systematically. And so you need to know what they don't know and how best to integrate them in your classroom. And so that's what we'll be focusing on in that final section. Now, I've had the good fortune of training teachers, not just in Australia, but in many countries around the world. And what they've typically found is that after completing the program, it's totally opened their eyes to so many new possibilities of the Fitzroy Method, and it's really improved the results they've been getting with their students. So, you know, if you come along to a course, I'm sure that you'll find a similar thing. I'm sure you'll find that not just do you get great ideas, but your students start to learn at a whole new, much more rapid rate. So if you do decide to come along, I'd love to see you. If not, good luck with your students. And as I say, if you do come along, I'd be very happy to see you there. So thank you.